call the meeting to order. And for some reason, I don't have the agenda sitting in front of me, but as I remember, we only have one thing on the agenda, and that is we formed a small committee consisting of Dr. Suchman and Dr. Legler and Jason White and me, and we had some conversations about the services that the City Health Department provides and concerns about whether or not those should consider continuing or give in to the county system as we've had several times in the past. And we did come up with a letter, and our recommendation was to send that letter to the council. Jason is our crafts person. Jason, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So first of all, a reasonable conversation to have. Around the state, counties do health departments, and in the metropolitan area, counties, Kansas City and Independence are the organizational structures. That being said, what services do we need? What services do we provide? What services might the county provide? It's appropriate for the occasional evaluation of that. I think the motivation for the conversation comes from the reality that on the federal level, there are substantial cuts in funding for public health. All public health departments utilize long-standing grants, and we're no different than Jackson County or St. Louis County or anybody else. And those have been cut back and are threatened. I would add at the state level, the state budget is projected to be tight. We'll know more on that in a week. But the expectation is that we face the same funding issues that Jackson County does. And when we went through this in the past, some of the services the county provided were not matching up with the services the city provided. So in conversations, it had been, if we're going to have a conversation, we need to have good information. And I think that's really sort of twofold. One, what services do we need to be providing for our community, which is substantially different than some of the other communities in Eastern Jackson County in its needs. Number two, what do we provide and what should we be providing? And then the second area is the funding. So how does the funding support for our agency look differently than others? And part of that question is a health levy that we have on the books. It dates back to 1962. Christina may correct me here. And there's questions to be asked and answered as to what may be plausible under that, but that's calculations including the Hancock Amendment that's way out of my league. Christina might be able to do that math, but I don't have enough fingers. And then what is allowable by council action versus public action, and whether you're going to provide services through the city or the county, you got to have the revenue to support it. So I think there's a multifold issue here. In conversations, there's a couple of very good options that I don't think are going to be too expensive, and that to help with the conversation. One of the county health directors in the region, Gary Zaborowski, and I butchered his last name. It was not on intention. He's recently retired and has hung his shingle out. And Paula Nicholson, who ran the state health department, and she was not a political appointee. She was a professional that advanced up through the ranks. She's hung her shingle out. Both, I think, would do, and there may be others, but I think we can encourage the city council that if these conversations are going to go on, let's spend a moment to do the evaluation and get good information on the table. So that was the impetus for the word crafting. I've already talked too much. Terry, you should shut me off at a time limit. This meeting will run long.
So basically what the subcommittee decided was that we should consider hiring someone who knows how to evaluate these things well and can provide information to the city council to let them make a informed decision as to the direction we should be going. And the subcommittee feels that that's appropriate. Jason has a couple candidates that we could consider, the council could consider hiring, so that the council members have a valid viewpoint on the needs of our community and how we can best serve them. Questions about anything?
No, I think that's a great idea, having a consultant come in, because it's somebody different than us saying, hey, this is what's important to us. It's a third party that says, hey, this is really what should be happening here. I didn't realize that we had two people that could possibly be candidates, which is also great.
Can I ask about next steps?
The next step, as I understand it, would be to send this letter from the advisory committee to the council members.
And then after that, does the council decide to take action or not? And they get to assign it to staff or a council subcommittee? Or how do you what would be your perfect world if this went to the council and they acted on it? What would you hope for?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Jason.
And Councilman McCandless, we haven't discussed this, so my comment is my own, but barring one loudmouth layperson, you've got some pretty smart people on this board. So I would take advantage of them. I also think they're focused on the issue, and the issue isn't the organizational structure. The issue is what services should we be providing, and how do we assure we've got the revenue stream to support that. So I would advocate that if the council is comfortable in spending some money on a consultant, and we could help, I don't know who in purchasing, but I think we could help with quick drafting of content as is requested, and then work with that consultant, because you got folks here that have been in healthcare, variety of aspects of that in the community. And I don't know how much either of those two people are going to need, but they are going to need a sounding board. And this is a good sounding board and group to sort of discuss and cuss about how to think about the issue and move forward with considering this issue. So I would advocate, I'm volunteering all these people here for extra work.
Okay, so I'm going to reflect back what I heard you say. You're anticipating a letter comes to the council. The council asks the city manager to scrounge some funds to be able to issue an RFP, and you would help, along with like Rich Sessi from procurement, to define the scope and the deliverable for this. And then that would be delivered to you or to the council?
I would argue that becomes a public document as soon as they're done with it. So delivered to, the council runs things. So I view us as simply supporting the endeavor. I don't want anybody to think it's coming to us and somehow we can do something with it. So I would advocate it's once they've made their deliverables, it's a public document and should be treated as such. But I'm not daunted by, I don't see it as a huge lift to help define the scope and the deliverables for what we need. and participate in an advisory capacity with them to assure we get what we need from the experience. We've all seen a lot of consulting reports that end up on a shelf and don't guide policy thinking. And I think either of those two, and there may be others out there, I mean, that appear in the process that should be considered. But I think this group would be a good group to be engaged in the conversation to better assure we're going to get good information to move forward with the next generation of how we provide services towards our neighbors. And I'm talking too damn much, but I hope people will argue with me if they're uncomfortable with what I'm saying. This is a group. It's not just me.
So Jason, you would anticipate that there is a written report as well as an in-person kind of, you get to ask questions of the consultant, and the council would get to come and listen to that conversation, so they got the benefit of the in-person?
Well, I think the end result, and I'm freewheeling here, the end result ought to be public. And so there's a written report, and I absolutely agree with where you seem to be guiding us. There ought to be that consultant either in person or zooming into a study session, so they're reporting to the decision-making body. Now, they may have presented a final draft to this group for some argument and discussion and refinement of it. But the final report becomes public when they say, "Here, I'm done," and it ought to end up on a website and be visible and part of a community conversation to the extent folks are interested, and then time on a study session. Sorry, Christina, but my opinion is public health is not well thought of. People will get excited about the damn trash companies driving up and down their streets, but nobody gets too excited about public health. And yet, dadgummit, keeping vaccinations going into our younger kids and checking daycares and running disease outbreaks to ground, it's pretty damn important. And so forcing it upon the community through, here's the document and here's a study session, I think is good to force the community into this conversation to the degree that they would open their ears and eyes and engage. I really am too grumbly. Terry, I'm unmuted.
Any other questions? Dr. Legler, I think you were going to say something, but I don't think your mic was on.
Yeah, I just lost the video here.
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay, do you hear an echo when I talk?
A little bit, but that's okay. It's better than Jason.
Otherwise, I can get out. Otherwise, I can get. Tell you what, let me get out because there's a real echo I'm getting now. I'll go back in.
While Dr. Legler is re-beaming back up into us, does anybody else have any questions? Genesis, you're just sitting there and being so quiet. And we have so many health issues in communities. We have physical health, we have mental health, we have infectious disease health. There's lots of issues. And what are your viewpoints on having somebody assess what we need to be doing?
I mean, this is all kind of new to me, but when I consider my own experience and those of the people that I work with, having some sort of presence and independence is very vital to us because, especially with the lack of transportation and those kind of barriers that going to Kansas City or going to Lee Summit is like tremendous. And a lot of times they just don't make it out there. Now, if they're working with case managers, our case managers can get involved and we help them with transportation. But I remember how I was directly impacted when I no longer had access to the health department over around the corner, and how stressful and defeating that was, knowing that I had to try to find a way out in that direction for some of the things that I was supposed to take care of. And I think the population really doesn't have a voice, that it affects the one that it affects the most. So that's just my take and what I'm trying to understand from everything that you guys are describing here. So it would be very interesting to see that comparison of services. But I think just having that connection somewhere in our community is crucial. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Dr. Lakeler, you're back. But you're silent. Dr. Lakeler, we don't have any audio yet. Nope. Sorry.
Dr. Lakeler, if you're willing to just put it in the chat, I was going to say we can make sure we read it for you. Or you can call in. We can try to make this work.
Am I in?
Yep, now we got you.
Great. Anyway, I had recalled from before that there's a echo again. Let me do this. Okay, maybe I still got the echo. I did recall that a number of years ago, the Health Department for Independence had either closed or merged or whatever with Jackson County. And then looking into it, it appeared it reconstituted itself, I think, around the time of the pandemic, and maybe because of funding. What I'm curious, when that merger happened years ago, was it purely financial reasons, or were there other reasons that the Independence Department merged into the Jackson County Health Department? And that's really what I've not been very clear on.
Spinny, you want to give us that history?
Well, I'm happy to weigh in. You're going to get, and Christina's already snickering. So I served on the Board of Health, and the city manager, who I grew to like and respect, made one of the mistakes that he and I never spoke of, but he felt within his authority in the city as a city manager, he could make the budget savings, and under state law, if the city health department didn't exist, the county would pick it up. And so it was eliminated. I was extraordinarily vocal with 2 council members and a mayor that evening and none of them knew it was happening before it happened. So it was extraordinarily bad process from a political organizational standing, but it was also not planned. So the first meeting of the Board of Health, within days, we asked the assistant city manager for the plan, and they had not talked to the county, nor did they have a plan. We were not happy. Nobody knew what the county could provide. There was these broad assumptions. And so when the county came in, and they're nice people, they're good people, and they didn't match up well. So the example I have from memory is I had a foster care in the school system at the time, and we typically offered vaccinations in the schools, and the county would only do it if they could charge like $15 a head. And the school district, and Lori may correct me here, said that's not how we work. And they were a few weeks from kicking it off, and they went looking for another way to get vaccinations into kids' arms in the schools. The county couldn't pull that off. I personally was very, very upset because it shouldn't have happened. If you'd have planned a transition, you'd have known where the issues were. And then when I tried to get my kid vaccinated for something or another, and I don't remember what it was, and I got on their website, I'm not the smartest guy, but I couldn't register him. And my failure was I wasn't properly reporting whether he felt ill 2 weeks prior to getting the shot, even though I was scheduling it like 3 weeks in advance and the date of his last period. And I didn't think to answer those questions because they didn't pertain to the process. And when we asked them to change their silly little their process, their intake, they said, yeah, no, you know, we were not in a position to engage. And so I would advance the concern that as we move forward, if we're going to work with the county doesn't have an advisory group, let alone anybody that can say, hey, this really doesn't make sense. And sorry, Christina and Dr. McCandless, sometimes the bureaucracies need citizen input to get it right. And that's why you got this group. And I never felt we had input. It came back, and again, it's Jason talking, for purely political reasons. Many of us were unhappy in the early days of the pandemic with the services coming from the county. Now, in their defense, I think there was a lot of folks struggling to figure out how to respond. And others may have a differing view, and I would respect that. But and so there was general concern, and so we ought to have our own health department. And so that was a purely political maneuver. We had 2 lobbyists at the time, and they leaned on the governor, who leaned on Dr. Williams, the director of the state health department, who had to issue approval because that's structure in the law. And again, we started it back up with no transition plan, no assessment of what we were supposed to be doing. And we threw Christina and her team into trying to respond to the pandemic. Hindsight, both of them were badly done, badly planned, and golly, I don't want to go through that again. The citizens deserve better, and I think we're taking those steps. So I hope that was helpful. You've known me enough to know I carry my own biases, and anyway, you got some of that in there too.
Well, and that does help, because I didn't know if this was purely a budgetary reason why it closed or merged years ago. Sounds like the transition back then was not handled in a very good way. Certainly don't want to repeat that, but I would agree with what it sounded like the consensus is, having an outside consultant who has the time and the resources to really do a comparison. since the city council is expending the money for the hiring the consultant, certainly the consultant would generate their report to the council, and then the council would decide how they want to share that report, hopefully back to this committee, and then we can make a recommendation based upon what the report has.
Any other comments or questions? Well, the chair would entertain a motion.
Well, I'll throw my name in. I would move that the committee would recommend that the city council arrange for an independent, experienced consultant in an impartial manner to look at these services and doing a cost benefit analysis of Independence Health Department as is, or Jackson County Health Department, what services could be maybe not duplicated, and try to provide services in the most cost-efficient manner.
We have a second for that motion?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Wave your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I hear no one opposed. See no one opposed. So the motion carries. So Christina, how would we manage to do that? Do we take a letter that has been worked
Yes.
on by the subcommittee?
Yes, so if what the motion entailed also is captured in that letter already, if you guys send me a copy of that letter, I'll put it on your official letterhead and make it all pretty with all the names that are supposed to go there. That would then be sent to the council. And then I'll make sure it's also an information only item for the council, so it's attached there for the public. And that will start the process for you.
I think we can make that happen. Any other business we need to deal with?
That was the only business on the agenda for tonight. All you have left is a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a good night and stay dry.